I stepped onto the rooftop in Rome, the twilight sky stretching out over the city like a painting, all oranges and purples mixing together. The air smelled of fresh bread and wine, and the chatter of my wife's family filled the space. It was Celeste's 65th birthday, a big deal for the Rutherfords, and I'd spent weeks making sure every detail was perfect. I was late. Traffic had been a nightmare, but I figured they'd saved me a spot. I mean, I'm family, right? Marissa's husband, part of the crew. But as I walked toward the long table, something felt off. I counted the chairs. 12, not 13. My chest tightened. Everyone was already seated, sipping drinks, laughing, their fancy clothes catching the soft glow of the string lights. Marissa looked up at me, her dark hair perfect, her red dress hugging her like she was born to wear it. She smirked, a little cruel twist to her lips. "Oops, guess we miscounted," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. A ripple of laughter went around the table. Celeste, her brothers, the cousins, all 12 of them, their smug faces turning toward me like I was the evening's entertainment. I stood there, my tie suddenly too tight, my hands clenching at my sides. Humiliation burned through me, hot and sharp. They didn't even try to hide it. No one stood up. No one offered a chair. No one said, "Hey, let's fix this." Just that laugh, echoing in my ears. I could feel my face getting red, my heart pounding like it wanted to break out of my chest. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Seems I'm not family," I said, loud enough to cut through their chuckles. Then I turned and walked out. My shoes clicked on the stone floor, the sound sharp against the fading noise of their voices. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could picture it, Marissa rolling her eyes, Celeste waving a hand like I was overreacting, the rest of them shrugging it off. But I wasn't done. Not even close. As I stepped into the cool Roman night, the air hitting my face like a wake-up call, I pulled out my phone. I'd spent weeks setting up this dinner, booking the venue, paying the deposit, coordinating the staff. My name was on everything. My credit card, my contacts, my work. I dialed the restaurant manager, a guy I'd tipped extra to make sure the night went smooth. "Cancel it," I told him. "All of it. The food, the drinks, the music. Refund my card. Let them figure it out." He hesitated, but I didn't. "Do it now," I said, my voice hard. I hung up and kept walking, the Colosseum looming in the distance, ancient and unbothered. 10 minutes later, I stopped at a corner bar, ordered a beer, and leaned against the railing. I could still see the rooftop from here, the lights flickering as the waiters started moving. I imagined the moment they realized, the plates not coming, the wine not pouring, the bill landing in their laps. Celeste's face going pale, Marissa's smirk fading. They'd figure out quick enough that I wasn't just some guy they could laugh off. I took a sip of my beer, the cold bitterness hitting my tongue, and felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about a chair. It was about everything, years of being the outsider, the punchline, the one they tolerated but never wanted. I'd given them everything, and they'd given me nothing. Not anymore. I watched the chaos unfold from a distance, the family scrambling, their perfect night unraveling just like I'd planned. It wasn't loud or messy, not yet. It was quiet, controlled, mine. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel small. I felt like me. 5 years ago, I was a different guy, standing in a crowded ballroom in Boston, feeling a little out of place but trying to blend in. I was there as a logistics consultant, helping a big company sort out their supply chain mess for a gala they were throwing. The room was all chandeliers and polished floors, people in suits and dresses worth more than my car. I wasn't one of them, not even close. I grew up in a small town, worked my way through community college, built a career moving boxes and numbers around. Solid, simple stuff. Then I saw her. Marissa. She was across the room, laughing with some guy in a tux, her black dress catching the light like it was made for her. She had this energy, sharp, alive, like she owned every inch of the place. I don't know why I walked over. Maybe it was the way she tilted her head, or how her eyes flicked around like she was sizing up the world. I grabbed 2 glasses of champagne from a passing tray, took a breath, and stepped into her orbit. "You look like you could use a refill," I said, holding one out. She turned, sized me up quick, and smiled, not a fake smile, but something real, warm. "Bold move," she said, taking the glass. "Most people here don't talk to me unless they want something." I shrugged. "I don't want anything. Just figured you might be bored." She laughed, and that was it. We clicked. We talked all night, about the gala, her job in marketing, my work with schedules and trucks. She didn't care that I wasn't some high roller. She said she liked how I saw things, how I didn't try to impress her. By the end of the night, We were leaning against a balcony railing, the city lights stretching out below us, and I knew I was hooked. She was magnetic, pulling me in without even trying. But then came her family. The Rutherfords. Old Boston money, the kind of people who owned summer houses and talked about legacy like it was a job. I met them a few weeks later at some fancy brunch Marissa dragged me to. I wore my best jacket, shook hands, smiled too much. Her mom, Celeste, looked me up and down like I was a delivery guy who'd wandered in by mistake. "So, you're in shipping?" she asked, her voice dripping with something I couldn't quite name. "Logistics," I said, keeping it polite. "I make sure things get where they need to go." She nodded, but her eyes said it all. I wasn't enough. Marissa's dad barely spoke, just sipped his coffee and stared out the window. Her uncle cracked a joke about my tie, and her cousins didn't even bother with me, too busy talking about their ski trips. I felt it right then, this wall between me and them. I wasn't their kind. Marissa squeezed my hand under the table, whispered, "Don't worry about them," and I tried not to. She said she loved me, a few months later, after a late-night walk through the common. I said it back, meaning every word. I thought that was enough. I thought her love would bridge the gap, make me part of the family over time. But it didn't. Every dinner, every holiday, I was the plus one, the guy they nodded at but never really saw. Celeste would ask about my little projects, like I was a kid with a lemonade stand. Marissa would laugh it off, say they'd warm up eventually. They never did. I kept showing up, though, carrying dishes at Thanksgiving, fixing a leaky faucet at their beach house once, thinking maybe effort would win them over. It didn't. I was still the outsider, the one who didn't belong. Looking back, I see it clear as day. That night in Boston, when I met Marissa, I fell for her so hard I didn't notice the fine print. She came with a family that had never let me in, no matter how much I tried. I thought love was enough. I was wrong. I stood in the Rutherford dining room, the long oak table stretched out in front of me, covered with plates of roast chicken and fancy little salads nobody really ate. It was another family dinner, maybe 6 months after Marissa and I got married. The chandelier above us threw light everywhere, making the silverware gleam like it was showing off. I'd worn a nice shirt, ironed it myself, hoping to fit in just a little. But as I sat there, fork in hand, I could feel it, the way they all looked past me. Celeste was at the head of the table, her gray hair pulled back tight, talking about some charity auction she was planning. Marissa's dad, Henry, was next to her, nodding like he always did. Her uncle Paul, a loud guy with a red face, was telling a story about his golf game. The cousins were there too, scrolling their phones, half listening. I tried to join in. "The auction sounds great," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I could help with the logistics, moving the stuff, setting up the space." Celeste glanced at me, her lips pressing into a thin line. "Oh, that's sweet, Daniel," she said, like I'd offered to draw her a picture. "But we've got professionals for that." The table went quiet for a second, then Paul chuckled. "At least he's not in debt," he said, winking at Marissa. Everyone laughed. Everyone but me. My face got hot, but I forced a smile, stabbing my chicken a little harder than I needed to. Marissa didn't say anything, just sipped her wine and looked away. She never corrected them, never stood up for me. That was the pattern. My job. Tech logistics consulting, good money, steady work, was a joke to them. "Oh, Daniel and his trucks," her cousin Lisa would say, like I was playing with toys. I'd spent years building my career, figuring out how to get things from point A to point B, saving companies millions sometimes. But to the Rutherfords, it was nothing. They had their law firms, their investments, their real businesses. I was just the guy who married in. I tried harder after that. Showed up to every dinner, every holiday, every random Sunday brunch. I'd bring a bottle of wine I couldn't really afford, hoping they'd notice. I'd listen to Henry drone on about his stocks, nod at Celeste's stories about her fancy friends. Once, I spent a whole weekend helping set up one of her fundraisers, hauling tables, running cables, making sure the sound system worked. "Thanks, Daniel," she said when it was done, but it was the kind of thanks you give a waiter, not a son-in-law. Marissa saw it too. I know she did. We'd drive home after those nights, and I'd say something like, "They still don't like me, huh?" She'd shrug, turn up the radio. "They're just set in their ways. Give it time." But time didn't change anything. If anything, it got worse. They'd talk over me at dinners, plan trips I wasn't invited to, act like I wasn't even there. One Christmas, Paul handed me a gift, a cheap tie with trucks on it. "Thought it'd suit you," he said, grinning. The whole room laughed again. I took it, said thanks, but inside I was boiling. Marissa smiled like it was funny, and I wondered why she didn't care. I kept going, though. Kept showing up. I thought maybe if I proved myself, worked harder, stayed quiet, took the jabs, they'd see me as one of them. I organized more events, fixed things around their house, even drove Celeste to the airport once when her car broke down. But it was always the same. Polite nods, fake smiles, that wall I couldn't climb. Looking back, I see how dumb I was. I married Marissa, sure, but I got the Rutherfords too, a family that didn't want me, didn't respect me, didn't even try. And Marissa? She let it happen. Every time they cut me down, she just sat there, sipping her wine, like I wasn't worth defending. I thought I could win them over. I couldn't. I sat at the kitchen table in our Boston apartment, my laptop open, papers scattered everywhere. Marissa leaned against the counter, sipping coffee, her hair still messy from sleep. It was months before Celeste's 65th birthday, and she'd just dropped the bomb. Mom wants it in Rome, she said, casual, like it was no big deal. And I told her you'd help plan it. I looked up, my pen hovering over a notepad. Rome? That's a lot. She smiled, that charming smile that used to pull me in. Come on, Daniel, you're good at this stuff. Flights, hotels, all that logistics magic you do. It'll be our event, yours and mine. Our event. Those words stuck with me. I wanted to believe her, wanted to think this was a chance to finally show the Rutherfords what I could do. So I said yes. I dove in head first. I spent nights researching venues, calling vendors in broken Italian, figuring out how to get 13 people across the ocean without a hitch. I booked flights, business class for Celeste, because she'd complain otherwise, confirmed hotels with views of the Colosseum, vetted caterers until I found one that could handle her picky tastes. It wasn't cheap. Deposits piled up, and when Marissa said the family's checks were delayed, I put it on my personal credit card. Thousands of dollars, just sitting there, waiting for them to pay me back. I didn't mind, not then. I thought this was my shot. If I pulled off a perfect trip, maybe they'd stop seeing me as the outsider. Maybe Celeste would look at me with something other than that tight-lipped pity. Maybe Marissa would be proud. I worked like a dog. I mapped out a whole week. Vineyard lunch in Tuscany, a private Vatican tour, a boat ride off the Amalfi Coast. I picked a rooftop restaurant in Rome for the big night, one with a view that'd knock their socks off. I even handled the little stuff, floral arrangements, a string quartet, a cake from some famous bakery. Marissa kept calling it our event, popping in with ideas, but I was the one making it happen. She'd say, "Oh, Mom will love this," or "Good call on the wine." And I'd feel a little spark, like we were a team. But deep down, I knew the truth. I wasn't her partner in this. I was the help. She'd toss me a smile, then disappear to her phone or her office, leaving me to grind it out. I'd call her at night, run through details, the villa's booked, but the deposit's still on my card, and she'd say, "You're amazing, Daniel." Then hang up quick. I ignored the signs. The way she'd dodge questions about the family's plans. The way Celeste never thanked me, just sent emails with more demands. "Make sure the boat has shade," she wrote once. "I don't do sun." I'd nod to myself, add it to the list, keep going. I thought I was building something, proving my worth, earning my place. I pictured the night of the party, me standing there, glass in hand, the Rutherfords clapping me on the back, saying, "Well done, Daniel." Stupid, right? I even packed my suit early, ironed it myself, imagining how I'd walk into that rooftop dinner feeling like I belonged. I'd spent so long on the outside, taking their jabs, swallowing their condescension. This was my way in, or so I thought. I didn't see it then, but I was the mule, not the mastermind. Marissa let me carry the load, let me think it was ours, while she and her family kept me at arm's length. I poured everything into that trip, time, money, hope, because I believed it'd change things. I believed her. I should have known better. The Rutherfords don't let people in. They use them. And I was about to learn that the hard way, standing on a Roman rooftop with no chair to sit in. I sat at our kitchen table in Boston, the wooden surface scratched from years of use, my laptop glowing in the dim morning light. Papers were everywhere, flight schedules, hotel confirmations, scribbled notes in my messy handwriting. Marissa stood by the counter, her coffee mug steaming, her hair still tangled from sleep. She looked at me over the rim of her cup, her eyes bright, and said, "Mom wants her 65th birthday in Rome, and I told her you'd help plan it." Her voice was light, like she was asking me to pick up groceries, not organize an international trip for her whole family. I froze, my pen hovering over a half-written list. Rome, I said, my throat tight. That's a big ask, Marissa. She smiled, that dazzling smile that used to make my heart flip. Come on, Daniel, you're the best at this. Flights, hotels, all that logistics stuff you're so good at. It'll be our event. You and me, making it perfect. Our event. Those words hit me hard. I wanted to believe her, wanted to think this was my chance to finally prove myself to her family. I'd been the outsider for years, the guy they tolerated but never welcomed. Maybe this could change that. So I nodded, said, okay, I'll do it, and jumped in with both feet. I spent weeks on it. Nights after work, weekends, hunched over my laptop until my eyes burned. I called airlines, booked business class seats for Celeste because she'd hate anything less, found a hotel in Rome with a view of the Colosseum that'd make her gasp. I vetted vendors, stumbling through Italian on the phone, making sure the caterers could handle her picky tastes. Nothing too spicy, nothing too plain. It wasn't cheap. Deposits stacked up fast, thousands of dollars for the restaurant, the villa, the yacht. Marissa said the family's checks were delayed, so I put it all on my personal credit card. I didn't complain. I thought they'd pay me back eventually, and besides, this was my shot. If I pulled off a flawless trip, maybe the Rutherfords would see me differently. Maybe Celeste would stop looking at me like I was a stray dog they'd taken in. Maybe Marissa would stand by me, proud, and I'd feel like I belonged. I worked like crazy. I planned a whole week. Lunch at a vineyard in Tuscany, a private Vatican tour with a guide I found online, a boat ride off the Amalfi Coast with shaded seats because Celeste hated the sun. The big night was the rooftop dinner. I picked a place overlooking Rome, with string lights and a view that'd stop your heart. I handled every detail, the floral arrangements with white roses, a string quartet playing soft music, a cake from a bakery so famous I had to beg to get it. Marissa kept calling it our event, popping in with little suggestions. Mom loves red wine, she'd say, or make sure the flowers aren't too tall. I'd nod, add it to my list, feel a spark of hope. She'd smile at me across the room, and I'd think, we're a team. But I knew, deep down, I was doing the heavy lifting. She'd toss me those compliments, you're amazing, Daniel, then vanish to her phone or her office, leaving me to grind out the details alone. I'd call her late at night, run through updates. The villa's booked, but the deposit's still on my card, I'd say. She'd yawn, mutter, you've got this, and hang up fast. I ignored the red flags, the way she dodged questions about the family's plans, the way Celeste never thanked me, just emailed more demands. The boat better have shade, she wrote once. I don't do sun. I'd sigh, adjust the plan, keep going. I thought I was building something big, proving my worth, earning my spot. I pictured the party night, me in my suit, glass in hand, the Rutherfords finally saying, good job, Daniel. I ironed that suit early, hung it in the closet, imagining how it'd feel to walk in and belong. I was wrong. I wasn't her partner. I was the mule. She let me think it was ours, let me carry the load, while her family kept me at a distance. I poured everything into it, time, money, hope, because I believed it'd change things. I believed her. I should have seen it. The Rutherfords don't let you in, they use you. And I was about to find out how far they'd go, standing on that rooftop with no place to sit. I sat on the edge of our bed in Boston, the room dark except for the faint glow of the streetlight sneaking through the blinds. It was late, past midnight, and Marissa wasn't home yet. She'd said she had a work thing, some marketing meeting that ran long, but that excuse was getting old. I stared at the empty space next to me, the sheets still neat from that morning, and felt this heavy ache in my chest. Things weren't right between us, hadn't been for a while. I couldn't pinpoint when it started, but it was there, growing like a crack in a wall you keep hoping won't spread. We barely talked anymore, not real talking, anyway. It was all short sentences, tense little exchanges. How was your day? I'd ask when she walked in, her heels clicking on the hardwood. Fine, she'd say, not looking up from her phone. Yours? Fine. I'd mutter back, and that'd be it. Silence would settle in, thick and uncomfortable, like a guest we couldn't get rid of. She was always busy, meetings, calls, scrolling that damn phone of hers. I'd try to reach her, suggest a movie night or dinner out, but she'd wave me off. Too tired, she'd say, or maybe next week. Next week never came. I started feeling like a roommate, not a husband. We'd been married 3 years by then, and I kept thinking back to the early days, how she'd laugh at my dumb jokes, how we'd stay up late talking about nothing. That Marissa was gone. This one was distant, cold, like she'd built a wall I couldn't climb. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. She was on the couch, legs tucked under her, typing away on her phone. I'd just finished a long day, some client needed a rush job on a shipping plan, and I wanted her, just for a minute. I sat next to her, close enough to feel the warmth of her arm. "Hey," I said, soft, "can we talk?" She didn't look up. "About what?" she snapped, her fingers still moving. "I don't know," I said, fumbling. "Us. This. It feels off." She sighed, loud, like I was a kid bothering her. "Daniel, I'm working. Can it wait?" It couldn't, but I nodded anyway, got up, and walked away. That's how it went. Me trying, her pushing me back. Then came the night that broke me. I was in the kitchen, washing dishes, when her phone buzzed on the counter. She was in the shower, the water running loud through the walls. I shouldn't have looked. I knew it even as I reached for it. But I did. The screen lit up with a text from Julian. Just one line. "Can't wait to see you in Rome. Tell him yet." My stomach dropped, like I'd been punched. Julian. Her ex. The guy she dated before me. The one her family loved. Tall. Rich. Perfect for the Rutherfords. I'd met him once, at some party early on, and he'd shaken my hand too hard, smirked like he knew something I didn't. I stood there, water dripping from my hands, staring at those words. Rome. Celeste's birthday. The trip I was killing myself to plan. My mind raced, pieces clicking together I didn't want to see. She'd been distant for months, secretive with her phone, brushing me off. And now this. She was seeing him again. They were planning something big, something that involved me being out of the picture. I put the phone back, exact same spot, and turned off the sink. My hands shook, but I kept my face blank when she came out, towel around her, humming like nothing was wrong. "You okay?" she asked, glancing at me. "Yeah," I lied, forcing a smile. "Just tired." She nodded, grabbed her phone, and walked off. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there, her breathing soft next to me, and thought about it all. The affair. The trip. The way she'd been pulling away. And then it hit me. They weren't just sneaking around. They were setting me up. That dinner in Rome, the one I'd poured everything into, was going to be my humiliation. Her family knew. They'd always wanted Julian, not me. I was the placeholder, the fool who'd built their perfect stage just so they could kick me off it. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling the marriage I'd fought for slip away like sand through my fingers. I woke up the next morning with that text still burning in my head, Julian's words. "Can't wait to see you in Rome. Tell him yet." My eyes felt gritty from no sleep, but my mind was sharp, buzzing like a live wire. Marissa was already up, humming in the kitchen, pouring coffee like it was any other day. I lay there in bed, staring at the ceiling, and made a choice. I wasn't going to confront her, not yet. Yelling wouldn't fix this. She'd deny it, spin some story, and I'd be the bad guy for snooping. No, I had to be smarter. I had to play along, keep my cool, and figure out what they were planning. So I got up, splashed water on my face, and walked out like nothing was wrong. "Morning," I said, grabbing a mug. She smiled, too bright, too easy. "Morning. You sleep okay?" "Yeah," I lied, pouring coffee. "You." "Great," she said, and went back to her phone. I watched her fingers move, wondered if she was texting him right then, but I kept my mouth shut. We flew to Rome a week later. I held her hand on the plane, smiled for the stupid selfies she took with the family, acted like the perfect husband. Inside, I was a mess, anger, hurt, betrayal all churning together, but I didn't let it show. I'd spent years learning to hide how I felt around the Rutherfords, swallowing their jabs, their smirks. This was no different. I just turned it into a game. Step 1. Gather proof. I started small. When she left her phone on the hotel nightstand to shower, I snapped a quick photo of the screen, more text from Julian, flirty stuff about counting the days. I emailed it to myself, deleted the sent message from her outbox, covered my tracks. I dug through my inbox too, found emails from Celeste about the trip, none of them thanking me, just orders. Confirm the villa, change the wine. I saved those, build a file. Step 2. Check their plans. One night, I accidentally grabbed Marissa's tablet instead of mine. She was asleep, the hotel room dark except for the glow of the screen. I found the family itinerary, vineyard lunch, Amalfi boat ride, Vatican tour. My name was gone from almost everything. No seat for me at the vineyard, no spot on the boat, no ticket for the tour. They'd rewritten it all, erased me like I was nothing. I put the tablet back, my jaw tight, and sat there in the dark, piecing it together. The dinner, the big rooftop party, was the main event. That's where they'd do it, whatever it was. Humiliate me, maybe announce Julian stepping in. I could feel it coming. Step 3. Fight back. I didn't get loud or sloppy. I got surgical. I'd spent years in logistics, moving pieces, solving problems, staying 3 steps ahead. This was my battlefield now. I started making calls, quiet ones, from the hotel balcony while Marissa slept. First, my assistant back in Boston. Pull the vendor contracts for Rome, I told her. Every payment, every receipt, send me copies. She didn't ask why, just did it. Next, the restaurant manager. Double-check my reservation, I said. And keep me posted on any changes. He agreed, no questions. I called the villa owner, the yacht company, the tour guide, same deal. Everything was in my name, tied to my card, my company's resources. They didn't know it yet, but I held the strings. I kept smiling through it all. Took Marissa to breakfast, laughed at her dad's dumb stories, posed for photos with Celeste like a good son-in-law. They had no idea I was onto them. I watched them closer now, Marissa's quick glances at her phone, Celeste's smug little nods, the way her Uncle Paul kept saying, Rome's gonna be something special. Yeah, it was. Just not how they thought. I didn't sleep much those nights, lying next to her, planning. I wasn't emotional about it anymore, not sad, not even mad. It was cold, clear, like working a puzzle. They wanted to push me out, make me the fool. Fine. I'd let them think they'd won, right up until I flipped the table. The dinner was coming. My move was ready. I'd wear my silk gloves, polite, calm, invisible, until it was time to strike. They'd never see it coming. I stepped off the elevator onto the rooftop, the Roman twilight wrapping around me like a warm blanket, the sky all soft purples and golds. The Colosseum sat in the distance, huge and quiet, watching over the city. The air smelled like flowers and roasted garlic, and the sound of the string quartet I'd picked floated through the space, mixing with the chatter of the Rutherfords. I was late. Traffic from the hotel had been a mess, but I'd spent weeks making this night perfect. The table was long and elegant, covered in white linen, with roses I'd chosen spilling out of vases. The lights I'd ordered twinkled above, casting a glow on the 12 people already seated. Marissa was there, her red dress catching the light, her dark hair falling just right. Celeste sat at the head, her gray hair pinned up, sipping wine like a queen. The rest of them, Henry, Paul, the cousins, were laughing, clinking glasses, acting like they owned the world. I walked toward them, my suit pressed, my tie straight, expecting my spot to be waiting. Then I saw it. 12 chairs. Not 13. My stomach twisted, a slow, sick feeling creeping up. I stopped a few feet from the table, counting again in my head, hoping I'd missed something. I hadn't. Everyone was seated, their plates already out, their drinks half gone. No empty spot, no extra chair pulled up. I stood there, my hands in my pockets, feeling the eyes start to turn my way. Marissa looked up first, her lips curling into that little smirk I'd seen too many times lately. Oops, she said, loud enough for the whole table to hear. Guess we miscounted. A laugh rippled through them, Celeste's sharp chuckle, Paul's booming guffaw, the cousin's snickers. 12 smug faces staring at me, like I was the hired help who'd wandered too close. My chest burned, my throat got tight, but I didn't move. I scanned the table, waiting for someone, anyone, to say something. Hey, grab a chair, or we'll scoot over. Nothing. Just that laughter, bouncing off the stone walls, hitting me like a slap. I could feel my face getting hot, my hands clenching inside my pockets. This wasn't a mistake. I'd planned every inch of this night, the food, the music, the damn flowers, and they'd left me out. On purpose. I thought of Julian's text, the itinerary with my name scratched off, the way Marissa had been pulling away. This was it, the setup. They wanted me humiliated, standing here like a fool while they toasted their perfect little family. I took a deep breath, the air cool against my burning skin, and locked eyes with Marissa. She didn't flinch, just raised her glass a little, like she was daring me to make a scene. The others watched too, waiting for me to crack. I could have yelled, flipped the table, called her out right there. But that's what they wanted, me losing it, proving I didn't belong. I wasn't giving them that. Seems I'm not family, I said, my voice steady, louder than their fading laughs. I held Marissa's gaze for a second longer, letting her see I wasn't shaken. Not yet. Then I turned, my shoes clicking on the stone floor, and walked back toward the elevator. The quartet kept playing, the notes soft and mocking behind me. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could imagine it, Marissa rolling her eyes, Celeste waving a hand like I was overreacting, Paul muttering some joke about me. But I wasn't running. I was moving. I caught the waiter's eye as I passed, a guy I'd tipped extra to keep things smooth. I gave him a quick nod, the signal we'd set up. He nodded back, disappearing toward the kitchen. I stepped into the elevator, the doors sliding shut, and leaned against the wall, my heart pounding but my mind clear. This was the moment. They thought they'd won, thought they'd push me out. They had no idea what was coming. I'd built this night from the ground up, my name on every contract, my card on every bill. They'd forgotten that. I pulled out my phone, texted my assistant, "It's time. Pull it all." Then I stepped out into the room at night, the city humming around me, and headed for the bar across the street. The setup was theirs. The takedown was mine. I stood on the rooftop bar across the street, the cool Roman night brushing against my face, a beer in my hand as I leaned on the railing. The city stretched out below me, lights twinkling like stars, the Colosseum sitting heavy and silent in the distance. From here, I could see the restaurant I'd just left, the long table glowing under the string lights, the Rutherfords still seated, their fancy clothes catching the soft shine. My chest still burned from the humiliation, that moment when Marissa smirked and said, "Oops, guess we miscounted," her family laughing like I was nothing. But I wasn't there anymore. I'd walked out, given the waiter the nod, and now I watched, waiting for the chaos to hit. It didn't take long. 10 minutes after I left, I saw the waiter, short guy, black vest, lean down and whisper something to Celeste. Her head snapped up, her wine glass pausing halfway to her mouth. Even from this distance, I could see the shift, her shoulders stiffening, her face tightening. The others caught it too. Paul stopped mid-story, his loud voice cutting off. Marissa pulled out her phone, her fingers moving fast. One by one, they all reached for their devices, heads bending over screens, voices rising. I took a sip of my beer, the cold liquid sliding down my throat, and let myself smile, just a little. They were figuring it out. I'd spent weeks planning that trip. Every flight, every hotel, every event. My name was on the contracts, my company's resources tied to the bookings, my credit card holding the deposits. And I'd just undone it all. Before I walked out, I texted my assistant, "Pull it all." She knew what that meant. She'd called the vendors, the vineyard, the Vatican tour, the Amalfi yacht, the Tuscany villa, and canceled every reservation. Refunds were already hitting my account, reversing the charges I'd fronted when Marissa said the family's money was delayed. The restaurant was the best part. I told the manager days ago, if I give you a nod, kill the bill. Refund me, let them pay. He'd agreed, no questions. Now, the waiters weren't serving. The food wasn't coming. The tab was landing in their laps, full price, no discounts, no prepayments. I watched Celeste stand up, waving her arms, her voice carrying faintly over the street. Paul was on his phone, probably yelling at some poor call center guy. Marissa stayed seated, staring at her screen, her face pale even from here. The cousins scrambled, chairs scraping as they tried to figure out what was happening. It was beautiful, quiet, clean chaos, unfolding exactly like I'd planned. I'd spent years in logistics, moving pieces, fixing messes. This was my masterpiece. They thought they could erase me, leave me standing there with no chair, no respect. They didn't know I'd been ready. I'd seen Julian's texts, caught the itinerary changes, built my file of proof. I'd made calls, set traps, kept it all under wraps until the moment was right. Now they were stuck. No villa to sleep in, no yacht to sail, no fancy lunch to brag about. They'd have to pay out of pocket, scramble for new plans, explain to their rich friends why their perfect trip fell apart. I finished my beer, set the bottle on the railing, and leaned back, the night air cool against my skin. My phone buzzed, my assistant. "All done," her message said. "Refunds processing. They're calling vendors now," freaking out. I typed back, "Good. Let them sweat." I didn't feel glee, not exactly. It wasn't about revenge, not the loud, messy kind. It was about control. They'd spent years treating me like I didn't matter, like I was some tag-along they could kick aside. Tonight, I showed them I wasn't. I'd built their little world, and I'd torn it down with a nod and a text. The lights on the rooftop flickered as the waiters cleared plates that never got filled. Celeste sat back down, her hands in her hair. Marissa looked up, scanning the street like she might spot me. She wouldn't. I was out of their reach now, watching from the shadows, my withdrawal complete. The game wasn't over, but this round was mine. I sat in the hotel lobby later that night, the plush chair soft under me, a glass of whiskey in my hand. The place was quiet, marble floors shining, a few late-night guests murmuring at the desk. I'd left the rooftop bar after watching the chaos unfold, the Rutherfords scrambling like ants when you kick their hill. My phone was off, tucked in my pocket. I didn't need to hear their calls yet. I knew they'd come looking, and I was ready. The elevator dinged, and there she was, Marissa, storming in, her red dress wrinkled now, her hair falling out of its perfect shape. Her eyes locked on me, narrow and furious, and she marched over, heels clicking loud against the floor. "What the hell did you do?" she hissed, stopping a foot away, her hands on her hips. I looked up at her, calm, took a slow sip of my drink. The burn of the whiskey felt good, steadying. "Seems I'm not family, remember?" I said, keeping my voice even. Her face twisted, red creeping up her neck. "You canceled everything, the villa, the yacht, the dinner? You embarrassed me, Daniel. Mom's a wreck, Paul's screaming at vendors, and I'm the one they're blaming." I set the glass down on the table next to me, the clink sharp in the quiet lobby. "Funny," I said, leaning back. "I thought you'd be used to miscounting by now. Like with the chairs." She flinched, just a little, but I saw it. She opened her mouth, then shut it, her jaw tight. "You're vindictive," she spat finally. "Petty. This is low, even for you." That's when I smiled, not big, just enough to make her pause. I pulled my phone out, turned it on, and opened the folder I'd been building. Screenshots of her text with Julian, "Can't wait to see you in Rome. Tell him yet." Emails from Celeste cutting me out, the itinerary with my name erased. I held it up, let her see the screen. "I know about the affair," I said, my voice low, steady. "I know you and Julian planned to replace me. I know the dinner was your big moment to make me the fool. You wanted to control the story, poor Marissa, stuck with the loser husband, finally free with the guy her family always wanted. Right?" Her face went white, her lips parting like she couldn't find air. She stared at the phone, then at me, and I saw it, the moment she realized I wasn't guessing. I had proof. "Daniel," she started, but I cut her off. "Don't," I said, standing up, my height making her step back. "You don't get to talk your way out of this. You and your family spent years treating me like dirt. I gave you everything, time, money, effort, and you laughed in my face. Tonight was your move. This is mine." I closed the phone, slipped it back in my pocket. "The villa's gone. The yacht's gone. The bill's on you. Figure it out." She stood there, frozen, her hands shaking a little. "You're ruining us," she whispered. "Mom's reputation, my career, you ruined us," I said, stepping closer, my voice hard now. "You picked him. You picked them. I just made sure you felt it." I turned to walk away, but she grabbed my arm. "Wait," she said, desperate. "We can fix this. I'll end it with Julian. We can." I pulled free, looked her in the eye. "Too late," I said. "You don't get to play me twice." I walked toward the stairs, leaving her standing there, her dress a crumpled mess, her family's voices echoing from the rooftop above. They'd come down soon, Celeste, Paul, the rest, yelling, blaming, demanding I fix it. But I wouldn't. I'd shown them the folder, let them see the truth. The lobby doors swung shut behind me as I climbed to my room, the whiskey still warm in my gut. Fallout was messy, they'd spin it, call me the bad guy, but the proof was mine. Marissa's affair would leak, Celeste's perfect image would crack, and I'd be gone before they could rewrite it. I'd humiliated her in front of her own, just like they'd done to me. Fair's fair. I woke up early the next morning, the hotel room still dark, the Roman streets quiet outside my window. My bags were packed, just a carry-on, nothing fancy. I didn't need much anymore. I showered, shaved, put on a clean shirt, and checked my phone one last time. No calls, no texts. The Rutherfords had gone silent after last night's blowout in the lobby, Marissa standing there pale and speechless as I walked away. I didn't care. I was done. I grabbed my bag, checked out, and headed to the airport. The cab ride was smooth, the city waking up slow, old men sweeping sidewalks, delivery trucks rumbling past. I leaned back, watched it roll by, and felt something I hadn't in years, light. Like a weight was gone. At the airport, I upgraded my ticket to first class, used the refund money from the canceled villa. Why not? I deserved it. The plane took off, Rome shrinking below me, and I sipped a coffee, staring out at the clouds. Alone, yeah, but free. That was enough. Back in Boston, word spread fast. I didn't have to say much. Marissa's affair with Julian got out somehow. Maybe a cousin with a big mouth. Maybe a vendor who'd overheard the fight. Celeste's social circle started whispering. Donors pulled out of her charity galas. Her perfect Rutherford name took a hit. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. They'd done it to themselves. I kept my head down, started rebuilding. I quit my old job, too many ties to her family's world, and launched a new logistics firm. Small at first, just me and a couple clients I'd kept loyal over the years. I worked out of a rented office, a little place with creaky floors and a view of the harbor. Nothing flashy, but mine. Word got around about what I'd done in Rome, how I'd pulled the rug out, clean and quiet. Clients like that. Discreet, they'd say, signing contracts. You don't mess around. Business picked up, slow but steady. I hired an assistant, then a second guy to handle the numbers. Life got simple. Work, home, a beer on the porch at night. No more fancy dinners, no more pretending to fit in. Just me, doing what I was good at. A year later, I went back to Rome. Not for them for work. A client hired me to coordinate a wedding, some rich couple who wanted it perfect. I said yes, booked the flight, landed in that same city with a different feeling. No bitterness, no ghosts. Just a job. The wedding was on a different rooftop, not far from the one where it all went down. I stood there the night before, checking the setup, tables, lights, flowers, making sure every piece was in place. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange, the Colosseum glowing in the distance. I thought about that missing chair, the one that started it all. How I'd stood there, humiliated, while they laughed. How I'd walked out, turned it around, made them feel the sting. I didn't hate them anymore. Not Marissa, not Celeste, not even Julian. They were a lesson, a hard one, but I'd learned it. I raised a glass of water, didn't need whiskey now, to that night, to the seat that wasn't there. It showed me where I never belonged, pushed me to where I did. The wedding went off without a hitch the next day. Bride cried, groom grinned, guests clapped. My client shook my hand, said, "You're the best, Daniel." Flawless. I nodded, said thanks, packed up my clipboard, and left. On the flight home, I looked out at the clouds again, the world small below me. I'd lost a marriage, a family I never really had, but I'd gained something better, myself. No more proving, no more chasing. Just a quiet victory, built on my terms. That was enough.